Central Bank of Sri Lanka, Ajit Niwad Kabral.
It's a pleasure to be here this morning to share a few thoughts on the budget as well as the economic direction of our country. I know much has been said, a lot is being said, and perhaps over the next few days and months, there will be more that is going to be said. But I believe sometimes it is helpful for us to also understand the context in which this budget is being presented, as well as the context in which our economy is moving forward right now. We are all saddled with many challenges which have been quite severe over the past 2 years, and those have been aggravated to a great extent by certain macro fundamentals that were somewhat weak over the last few years. So therefore, we have to take stock of our situation and understand that certain tough decisions have to be taken, and also at the same time ensure that we have the courage, the ability, and the political will to ensure that those are implemented. That is always a challenge. There are many great ideas, but when it comes to implementation, there is always that element of difficulty that puts people away from implementing those. But during the last few months, you would have seen the government has been able to take certain tough decisions which have been politically criticized, but at the same time, in order to ensure stability, we have to take those decisions. You would have seen on 1st of October 2021, the central bank announced a series of policy measures as well as certain directions in which we would be moving in order to ensure that stability is ensured. The prime responsibility of the central bank, as you know, is to ensure economic and price stability as well as financial system stability. Now, it's very difficult to define stability, but you know instability when it happens. So right now, we have to ensure that our platform is made stable, and that is why certain decisions have to be taken in order to ensure that that platform is solid for everyone to move forward. So in that context, you would have seen the roadmap that was enunciated by the central bank, which sets out a clear policy guide and a direction as to which way the country is to move. I'll deal with a few. First of all, about our debt situation. Many of you have been anxious about it, and quite rightly so. And we have taken the necessary measures to ensure that the foreign debt component of our country is gradually reduced over a period of time. One of the main destabilizing factors that affected our economy was the fact that over a short period of time, a large amount of international sovereign bonds were issued. In fact, $6.9 billion was issued in a brief 15-month period, April 2018 to June 2019. During that period, this quantum added to our public debt and also added to our foreign public debt, which meant that in any situation of vulnerability that gets exposed and that gets highlighted, and that could sometimes be a factor that could affect the country's overall stability. So no sooner this new government came in, it took measures to shrink that component. In my first stint as a governor, which ended on 8th of January 2015, and if you take the figures as at 31st of December 2014, the GDP was $79 billion, and we had international sovereign bonds of $5 billion, which meant it was about 6.5%, 6.25% as a percentage of GDP. So it was a manageable quantum, and that could have gone up to about 7, 8%, but it was totally manageable at that time. Subsequently, it was the policy to issue more and more international sovereign bonds. And by end of 2019, we had $15 billion of international sovereign bonds, but the GDP had grown only up to $84 billion. So as a result, that percentage was too much. It was about 18%, 3 times the size of the number at the end of 2014. And therefore, when this new government came in, it was our policy to shrink that as soon as possible to around about the 8, 9% or even 10%. So that policy has been implemented. And what was the methodology? The methodology was that we would look at non-debt creating instruments as much as possible. And if there are debt instruments, those will be longer term, and those would be perhaps at a lower rate if we can negotiate, so that we will ensure that the stability is ensured. Now, a lot of people ask me, why don't you restructure? Why don't you restructure your debt? And at fora such as these, that's one of the key questions. As an accountant, I know what restructuring means. What does restructuring actually mean? If you look at restructuring, if you can shift your debt repayment period, that is a kind of a restructuring. If you can borrow at a cheaper price, that is a kind of a restructuring. If you are able to change the mix of your portfolio, that is a type of a restructuring. That's what accountants do all the time. And when they do that, they probably get a nice fee as well. So what does that mean? If Sri Lanka takes a conscious decision to change its structure of debt, and that is being pursued by the government, that is the most important manner in which this problem is being handled and taken care of. Restructuring doesn't mean that you have to go and ask for a haircut, that you have to go and put pain on your creditors, that you have to go and bring uncertainty for at least 6 to 8 months or even 1 year. Now, I know some people like that, because there is another huge set of individuals who can profit by that kind of exercise as well. So Sri Lanka has taken a conscious decision that we will not add pain to our creditors. We will maintain our credibility. We will ensure that we will go that path, even though it may mean there will be certain difficulties that we face in the meantime. So that policy, I think, has paid off well even in the past. I remember in 2009, when the global financial crisis struck the world, we had investments of around $900 million in the Sri Lankan treasury bills and treasury bonds. And at that time, there was naturally a flight of capital. When that flight of capital occurred, there were questions asked. Why are you allowing the flight of capital to take place? Is it possible for you to put barriers that will stop that from happening? But we said no. We said people have invested in Sri Lanka with confidence, and if they wish to take it away in accordance with the policy conditions of the issue, they can take it away. So there was no better way of ensuring that confidence is retained than by repayment. We repaid, and within a few months, we had threefold coming back because of the credibility that we were able to bring to the economy. Today, we are also facing a tough time. We have to make ends meet. One of our main inflows, which is the tourism receipts, have come to almost zero. So that has put an enormous amount of pressure. But we have been able to gently ensure that conditions will change. What are the steps that we have taken? We are now negotiating. We have already negotiated as well several swap arrangements between central bank to central bank. Government is pursuing certain loans, longer term with friendly countries, so that it will be government to government, that kind of loans. We are also working on that. I'm afraid I cannot reveal all the details because of radio silence that we maintain until such time that those deals are completed. And at the same time, you would have seen yesterday that we took certain steps to securitize the remittances, which is something that could have been done 10 years ago, 5 years ago, instead of only looking at ISBs as the option. There is about $7 billion of remittances that come in. Out of that, about $5 billion gets converted. The central bank has said that out of that conversion, we will buy 10%. Now that is quite a substantial pool of inflows, which, as all of you know, is possible to securitize. So that's an instrument that all good financiers will use in order to gather a pool of new capital. So we are doing that. Sometimes some people who didn't think about those things may be feeling somewhat embarrassed that they did not have the ability to think through such thoughts and ideas, and therefore may find fault with those. But the bottom line is, these are global instruments that need to be used in order to ensure that stability could be maintained. Stability could be assured. So these steps are being taken. We also have taken steps to ensure that exporters, after meeting all their import requirements, are also requested to convert their dollars into rupees. Now, I know there have been a few instances of people finding certain complications with that, but we have explained that to exporters, and many of them have seen the reason that it is not an unfair practice. It's a practice that has been implemented in India for over 8 years. It is being implemented in Bangladesh, in so many countries, in Thailand, in all those countries, it is being implemented, and very successfully so. When you import, what do? You get goods down here, and you take rupees, convert the rupees into dollars, and pay for those goods. When you export, what happens? You send goods out from here, and then that is the goods outflow. Dollars come in. Once the dollars come in, if the dollars don't get converted into rupees, that cycle will not be complete. That cycle will not be complete. Where will be the dollars for the importers to import? That won't fall from heaven. It has to come from the trading practice itself. So if that is not complete, then we have a problem. But we went to the extent of ensuring, like what has happened in India, that it would be possible for all exporters to retain the dollars that they require to make payment for the imports that they have to make in order to buy the items that they need to re-export. We also said expenses of a certain nature would be allowed, like payment of your loans and interest. You can also put in a certain portion if you're traveling abroad to take your exchange. Plus, also, if you want to invest in Sri Lankan development bonds, that is also permitted. So it has been a very fair practice. It's not something unfair. And even the conversations that we've had with so many others, they have acknowledged that it is a carefully thought through plan which will ensure stability. Now, stability is an important factor in any economy. I see here your picture. What would the budget have in store for your future? Nista Bhushan, you'll have got your creative people to show 4 pots that reminded me of the story of the people who were going on a pilgrimage, and they were putting their fistful of grain into the pot in order to make dinner. Some people went, actually most of them went, showed the hand in the pot, but didn't put anything. Next man went, took the fist, put it into the pot, but there was no grain. Finally, the dinner was hot water, not grain, not rice. Your pots have very interesting items reflected on that. Those pots can either be empty or you can put something in. We all have to put something in if we want to get something out. That's the logic behind all trading activities. So in this budget also, we see certain sacrifices having to be made. Certain bills have to be paid by government. An enormous amount of money had to be spent in order for us to be able to have a function of this nature. Today we are confident that we can interact without having the danger of COVID lurking behind every person. That is because 2 vaccinations have been done. We have a network which is possible for us to deal with an emergency, and many people are today being treated. That didn't come free, my dear friends. That didn't come free. That came through an enormous amount of expenditure, of commitment, and background factors that contributed to that. So this needs to be acknowledged. Sometimes we think that we can put our hand in and something will come out of it because others only have contributed. If all do that, we are not going to get anything. So this budget also was an unenviable budget because it was being prepared at a difficult time. But at the same time, we must recognize that as many steps as possible have been taken in order to ensure that clarity is maintained and also that no new burdens other than a few key ones have been imposed. I know it is tough for those to whom that burden has shifted. I know it is sometimes not the best because private sector could perhaps be uncomfortable about these changes. But if you look at last year, you find that almost all the main companies have made much higher profits than previously. And if you analyze those profits, and I've seen Nista's reports on that, you would find that a large component of that profit came from the fact that interest rates were low. The interest rates being low during the year 2020, as well as up to now in 2021, last 2 months it has been rising, mainly because of certain other factors that we had to ensure stability. We found that 330 billion has been saved by the private sector. 313 billion has been saved by the government sector. These are the large numbers. These have been in the hands of people. These have been in the hands of individuals as well as companies. And sometimes a portion of that will need to be given back to society in the form of taxes in order to ensure that the platform is made even stronger. So, my dear friends, this budget, I won't go into all the details. I think there is a panel of experts here who can dissect it brilliantly, and I have every confidence that they would do so. So I won't attempt to make that offer to you, but I would only leave with you the point that this is a difficult period of time for our country, for the world, and in that context, that there will be certain steps that we all need to take and appreciate if we are to ensure that the stability is maintained. Right now, those are being taken. We have taken bold steps. We have taken the steps that will steer us to stability once again. Those could be around for 6 months, maybe 8 months. But we have every intention of ensuring that business can be as usual in time to come, perhaps in the next 9 months or so. So that's the framework with which we are working. We have already given you a 6 months program as far as the stability and growth is concerned. We want to have growth back. If you don't have growth, it's not possible for us to sustain an economy. Well, I remember, as I told you, in 2014, the size of our GDP was 79 billion. And by a strange quirk of fate, when I came back to the seat as the governor, it was once again 79 billion after 7 years. But we are not discouraged. It has happened. we have had a bit of a standstill. Some other macro fundamentals may have got a little weaker, but that is the challenge that is before us. We see it like that. So we will work diligently to increase the GDP. Next year, we are hoping to have a GDP of around 90 plus, and that's a tall order. I'm not saying it's easy. People can say, no, this is pipe dream. But I remember in 2006, if you looked at our main macro fundamentals, we had growth of 3%. We had reserves of 2.5 billion dollars. We had unemployment at 12%. We had electricity coverage at 70%. We had poverty at 12.5%. But by 2014, GDP had grown to $79 million from $24 billion. The inflation had dropped down to 6 years of single-digit inflation. We had a large amount of infrastructure development taking place. Poverty was down to 6%. So there were changes, and the reserves were $8.2 billion. So there were changes which were pursued diligently. Now we have that challenge once again, and when we move towards that, we will need the support of all the people of our country. We'll need the support of the private sector. We'll need the support of your organizations who can then steer this towards growth and stability. And if we have growth and stability, my dear friends, we can achieve a lot more than what we have done so far.
A common complaint is that the budget didn't really offer relief to the people, particularly in the context of rising cost of living and the shortages. What would be your response, Governor?
I wish the budget could have provided more, but I believe in the context of global price rises, which has been phenomenal. The price rises across the world, commodity prices of all construction material, food prices have been there for everyone to see, and it's phenomenal. But with all that, we have to ensure that we provide a reasonable price. I know it's a challenge right now. I also know that it is something which is causing a serious amount of anxiety amongst people. But at the same time, if you look at the way it has been handled, we have attempted to provide as much as possible in the way of increasing only the most limited amount. I think it won't be it won't be a happy statement for many people because they would have expected a lot more. But unfortunately, in the current context of the world as well as locally, I believe that's the maximum that could have been done. And we are also attempting to ensure that the macro fundamentals stay stable, particularly the rupee, because we know if the rupee were to depreciate, like what some people suggest, if it goes to 220, that means there will be a 10% depreciation of the currency, which would mean that all items which are imported, and Sri Lanka imports 20 billion and exports 10 billion roughly, then what would happen is all that will be rising by that amount. So that's why we have to be conscious that we keep the macro fundamentals also at reasonable levels. And I believe that once stability is ensured over a period of time, not very long, maybe 6 months or 8 months or 9 months, then we could start adjusting those factors gently. But I believe right now we all need to understand that we have to put something into this pot that you have very nicely shown here. Otherwise, that pot will not have anything. So all have to put in your effort. At this period, I know it's difficult. It's difficult for the government as well. Yeah. But the government spending is also very high with all that. And we also have to make sure that the long-term benefits are also maintained. That's why the projects such as water, such as roads have to be continued. So I think it's a balance that is difficult to make, but it is being taken.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Gav, just one last question about, because our focus is on foreign direct investment. Do you think this budget really is a real turning point to attract a lot of FDIs? Right
now, although the budget didn't specifically give too many incentives in a kind of a new fashion, there are already on the table a large amount of incentives for investments. As you all know, the Port City Commission Act was passed a few months ago. The new Securities and Exchange Act was passed. All those have been passed as well as put in place in order to ensure that the FDI could also improve. So that's happening, although it had not been specifically mentioned in the budget.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Governor.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
For more latest news, subscribe to FTTV.